I installed a dashcam to catch a vandal. What I saw instead was my wife, in the back seat, with a man I hadn't seen in 20 years, Derek Voss. The same Derek who stuffed me into a locker in high school. The same Derek now running for state office, with a campaign slogan that read, "Integrity you can count on." At 11:47 p.m., my marriage ended, pixel by pixel. What came next wasn't rage. It was a plan to expose everything, the lies, the stolen money, and the two people who thought I'd never find out, until I did.
I didn't know that a random Tuesday at 11:47 p.m. would mark the beginning of the end. When I installed the dash cam in my wife's SUV, I just wanted to catch the punk who keyed her door at the grocery store parking lot. It was top of the line, motion detection, night vision, automatic cloud uploads. What I caught instead wasn't a vandal. It was betrayal. I was in my garage office, sipping cold coffee and sorting through invoices when the motion alert popped up. I opened the app and saw them. Her, my wife, Claire, the woman I'd loved for 15 years. Him, Derek Voss, the same guy from high school, former quarterback, now a city councilman running for state office. His bumper sticker said, "Integrity you can count on." His face right there in the dash cam, pressed between my wife's legs in the back seat. I watched it 7 times. On the 8th, I saved the footage to a secure drive labeled insurance. The days after were a blur. I went over every moment, every late meeting, every echo of her new heels on our hardwood floors. Her phone password used to be our anniversary. Now it was something else. But I was patient. I'm a mechanic. I know you've got to strip down the whole engine before you find the leak. Claire started bringing up Derek more often. He's helping with grant funding for the special needs program. I nodded. I smiled. I told her I'd fix her slow laptop and cloned her hard drive while I was at it. The folder was named Project Runway, but it wasn't about fashion. Invoices, falsified forms, grant requests for $87,000, actual equipment purchased, $340,000, $500,000 missing, hidden, stolen. Claire had a gift for numbers. She used to use it to help kids. Now she was using it to rob them. I started following the threads, tracking her meetings, watching her patterns. I created a new identity, Tom Patterson, a night janitor at Millfield Elementary. He started emailing journalists, sending documents, asking questions. While Claire came home late, smelling of cheap cologne and hotel soap, I kept building my case. I learned to stay silent while my heart screamed. Learned to brew coffee when I wanted to throw the machine across the room. Learned to be invisible while she stroked my shoulder and told me lies to my face. Because I knew one day the truth would be louder than every lie she'd ever told. And when that day came, I'd be ready. I knew something bigger was going on when Claire's name started showing up on every invoice, every altered grant request. She wasn't just helping Derek. She was running the show. That morning over breakfast, she smiled and kissed my cheek like everything was fine. "Big meeting today," she said, her voice bright. "Derek thinks we've got a real shot at federal funding." I chewed my toast and nodded. "That's great, honey. What's the grant for again?" "Special needs education. Adaptive tech. These kids need it." "Right, these kids. The same ones she was stealing from." I waited until she left for school, then went back to her laptop. I dove deeper into the files. She wasn't just filing the grants. She was creating fake shell vendors, fake companies, supposedly supplying equipment to the school. The invoices were impressive. Logos, tax IDs, itemized purchases. But the bank account numbers told a different story. Everything funneled back to two places: Derek Voss's campaign fund and a hidden investment account in the Caymans. It was organized, surgical, like she'd been planning it for years. That night, she came home early, made pot roast, opened a bottle of wine, played the doting wife like she hadn't just stolen $500,000 from the disabled kids. "How was work?" she asked me sweetly. "Busy, bunch of brake jobs. Marty's elbow deep in a transmission again." She laughed. "Tell him to wear gloves next time." I watched her laugh, watched her pour wine into the glasses we got as wedding gifts. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled. "How was school?" "Oh, paperwork. Parents, a lot of planning." Planning for what? Her next lie? Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, then excused herself to the bathroom. I followed a minute later, not to eavesdrop, just to check her phone, which she'd left on the kitchen counter. New password, 4 digits. I tried Derek's birthday. Bingo! Every text was deleted, but she hadn't turned off the cloud backup. That's where the real gold was. Backed up conversations dating back 6 months. Claire, how much can we move this month? Derek, $200K, maybe more. Claire, we're pushing it. If anyone audits, we're screwed. Derek, they won't. Nobody looks at education budgets. They were confident, smug, careless, and they'd forgotten who they were dealing with. I was building something too, something stronger than their house of lies. I started creating timelines, downloading receipts, comparing meeting locations and timestamps. I even had the Dashcam footage, which I uploaded to an encrypted folder labeled Justice. But I needed help. I needed someone who could blow this open wide. Enter Tessa Morrell, investigative journalist, fierce, smart, obsessed with exposing local corruption. I sent the first email from my fake account. "Ms. Morrell, you don't know me, but I work nights at Millfield Elementary. I've noticed some strange things: grant amounts not matching purchases, invoices that don't add up. I think someone's stealing from the kids. I've attached some documents. Maybe you can make sense of them. Tom Patterson." The next morning she replied, "Mr. Patterson, thank you for your courage. What you've sent is concerning. I need more. Can you get payroll records? Any correspondence between Claire Brody and Derek Voss?" I smiled. She'd taken the bait. Now it was time to reel them both in. Claire had no idea how close she was to losing everything. While she spent her evenings buried in work, I spent mine combing through the digital carcass of her life. The receipts, the lease, the offshore accounts. It wasn't just a paper trail, it was a blueprint for betrayal. And then Derek brought his Lexus into my garage. "Brake pads," he said, "should be a quick job." He extended his hand like we were old buddies. "Ethan Brody, right? Man, I doubt you remember me." "Derek Voss," I said, gripping his hand tighter than necessary. "How could I forget?" He laughed. "High school was a different world, huh?" "Yeah." A world where he shoved me in lockers and called it team building. I smiled. Different times. As I lifted his car onto the rack, I made an impression of his key fob using modeling clay. An old army trick. Sometimes you need to go where you're not supposed to. He sat in the waiting room, sipping coffee like a king. Claire's brilliant, you know. She's got a real knack for numbers." "She does," I said. "She's modest, too. But without her, we'd never land that federal grant. She's the engine behind the whole program." Funny. He had no idea just how accurate that metaphor was. When he left, I added his business card to my insurance folder. At night, Claire came home humming. Again. She was glowing like she'd just been handed a ticket to paradise. "Everything's coming together," she said, pouring herself a glass of wine. "Is it?" I asked. She nodded. "We might actually be able to help those kids, really help them." I stared into my drink. "How much longer until the funding goes through?" "Just a couple more weeks. After that—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Later that night, while she was taking a bath, I accessed her cloud backups again. This time, I found a series of voice memos. One of them had her voice saying, "Once it clears, Derek moves it, and I pull my half. Ethan suspects nothing." My name, my betrayal, her voice. It took everything I had not to kick the bathroom door open and demand answers. But that wasn't my plan. My plan was justice. I sent Tessa another batch of documents, meeting logs, email printouts, and a clip from the Dashcam. Just a few seconds, just enough to make things real. Her reply came the next morning. "This is bigger than I thought. I've contacted my editor. I'll need one more round of evidence. Any proof of offshore transactions, ideally with time stamps." I smiled. She was close to the kill shot. At dinner, Claire brought up Europe again. "We could finally take that trip. Paris, Venice. You always wanted to see Italy." I looked her in the eyes. Sounds perfect. Perfect, because I already knew she'd never make it there. 2 days later, Tessa called. Her voice was shaking. Tom, this is going to be front page. Monday morning. You should be ready. Once it goes live, your town will never look the same. Neither would my wife." The night before the article dropped, Claire curled into bed beside me like nothing was wrong. "Do you love me?" she whispered. "Every day," I said. It wasn't a lie. I loved the version of her that used to exist. The woman before the crimes, before the betrayal. That version was already dead. And in the morning, the rest of her life would burn with it. It started with a phone call at 7:04 a.m. Claire answered it in the bedroom, and I watched her face go white. "What? No, I don't know anything about that," she stammered. "Can I call you back?" She hung up, dropped her phone on the bed, and paced like a cornered animal. Then another call came in. She didn't answer it. Instead, she looked at me with wild, wet eyes. "Ethan, someone's accusing me of stealing money from the school." I played dumb. "What?" "There's an article. It's online. It has my name, and Derek's. They're saying we stole grant money." "Do you want to show me?" She hesitated. Then she handed me her phone. The headline from Tessa's article stared up at me. "Millfield educator accused in $847,000 special needs fraud scandal." Photos of her and Derek, scanned bank records, email transcripts, the whole damn circus. I handed the phone back. "Jesus, Claire, I didn't do this," she said, her voice cracking. "Someone set me up." I tilted my head. "Who would do that?" "I don't know. Someone trying to ruin Derek's campaign. It's politics, dirty politics. You know how it is." "Sure. Blame politics. Blame the weather. Blame anything but yourself. She grabbed her coat. I have to go to school. The principal wants to see me. I watched her pull out of the driveway, her tail lights glowing like the end of a fuse. By 9:30 a.m., she was suspended. By 11, Derek's campaign website was taken offline. By noon, the local news stations were circling like vultures. I sat in the garage eating a sandwich while the world she built with her lies collapsed in real time. That afternoon, Tessa called again. Your story's already hit 50,000 views. Newsweek just reached out. If you have more details, we can stretch this into a national piece. There's more, I told her, much more. That night, Claire came home with her hair undone, her eyes red and swollen. She dropped her purse and collapsed on the couch. They think I'm a criminal. I sat across from her. Are you? She looked like I'd punched her. How can you ask me that? Because I'm your husband, and I need to know who I'm married to. Her silence was louder than any answer. She cried. She begged me to believe her, told me that it was all a misunderstanding, that she only wanted to help those kids. But you didn't, I said quietly. You helped yourself, and you helped Derek. She reached out for my hand. Please, we can fix this. We can fight it. I didn't pull away, but I didn't hold on either. The fire had already started. She just didn't feel the heat yet. That night, while she slept, I pulled out the final piece of my plan. Derek's key fob, copied weeks ago. The cabin at Lake Tanaco, isolated, forgotten, the perfect place for closure. They'd built their lives on stolen funds. They thought they could run, hide, rebuild. But you can't rebuild on ashes. And by the time I was done, ashes would be all that was left. Lake Tanaco was 3 hours away, tucked deep in the Missouri woods. Derek's family had owned a cabin there for decades, used it for hunting trips and campaign strategy weekends. I'd found the address in Claire's emails. I drove there at night, lights off, as I neared the dirt road that snaked toward the bluff. I parked my truck half a mile away and walked the rest of the way under cover of trees and thunderclouds. A storm was moving in, lightning flashing behind the hills, the perfect night for what I had planned. 2 cars in the gravel driveway, Derek's Lexus, Claire's rental, no neighbors for miles. The windows flickered with firelight. Inside, they were trying to disappear. Not tonight. I circled behind the cabin, slashed both sets of tires, then made my way up the power pole with a wire cutter, 1 slice. The whole cabin went dark. Inside, I could hear them yelling. What the hell? Derek's voice, angry, nervous. Maybe it's the storm, Claire said. Just stay calm. I used the copied key to unlock the back door and slipped inside, silent as a ghost. The kitchen smelled like old wood and bourbon. I moved along the walls until I reached the great room. They were there, sitting in front of the fireplace, whispering fast and low. Derek held a pistol. Claire was hugging her knees. We need to get out of here, she said. With what, Claire? The tires are gone. Phones aren't working. We waited out. She stood up, pacing. He knows. Ethan knows everything. He sent that article. He's behind this. Derek leaned forward. Then we go to the Caymans now. As soon as the storm clears, we'll never make it. She walked into the kitchen, right into me. I stepped out of the shadows. Hey there, Claire. She gasped and dropped the whiskey bottle she'd been reaching for. It shattered on the tile. Ethan, What? How? Quiet, I said, pressing the knife to her neck, unless you want him to hear you scream. Her breathing went shallow. Please, we can explain. I'm done with explanations. I guided her back to the great room, one hand gripping her arm, the other keeping the blade low and steady. Derek saw us and stood. Put the knife down, Ethan, or what? You'll shoot me? He hesitated. Nobody has to die tonight. No, I said. They already did. The moment you two decided to rob children and betray everything I believed in. Claire trembled beside me. Please, we were going to fix it. You can't fix this. I zip-tied her hands and shoved her onto the couch. Then I turned to Derek. Keys, accounts, passwords, everything. He resisted until I slid the knife into his wrist and pinned his hand to the coffee table. The scream shook the walls. Blood pooled fast, but I avoided the artery. I didn't want him dead, not yet. He gave me everything, every account, every code, every dollar. And when it was done, I opened the gas can and started pouring. Claire sobbed. Ethan, I'm pregnant. I paused. Whose? I don't know. Of course not. I dropped the pregnancy test into the gasoline and lit the match. Good luck, you two. The cabin roared to life behind me as I walked into the storm. The cabin burned for hours. I stood under the trees, the storm soaking through my jacket, watching the flames paint the sky orange. By the time the volunteer fire department made it down the muddy roads, the roof had collapsed. The walls caved. Nothing left but heat and ash. And silence. I drove to a truck stop an hour north, washed Derek's blood off my arm in the bathroom sink, cleaned the glass scratch on my shoulder, wrapped it in a bandage, didn't need it to look perfect, just enough to keep moving. I found a payphone out back and dialed a number I'd memorized. Detective Reeves. Yeah, he answered groggily. This is Tom Patterson, I said, using the janitor voice one last time. You want the offshore accounts tied to Brody and Voss? I got 'em. I gave him every number, every detail. Then I hung up. The fire, the storm, the crash of thunder in the hills, it had done its job. It had wiped the board clean. By noon the next day, the headlines hit. Bodies found in fire believed to be Claire Brody and Derek Voss. Police cited arson, evidence tampering, likely embezzlement. And the kicker? The money was recovered. $847 wired back into Millfield School District accounts within 24 hours. Anonymous source. Untraceable transfer. The kids got their money. The district got its program back. And the story wrapped up with a bow. At Claire's funeral, I wore the same suit I wore when we married. I stood beside her coffin and shook hands with neighbors who told me, you didn't deserve this. They were right. After the service, I drove to the school. Through the windows, I saw the new wheelchairs, the speech tools, the therapy gear bought with the returned funds. Kids laughing, learning, living. They would never know what it cost. And they didn't need to. 6 months later, Detective Reeves showed up at the garage. How you holding up, Ethan? One day at a time. We're closing the investigation, he said. Fire looked like an inside job, but Derek's prints were on the gas can. Timeline fits, case is shut. I nodded. He looked at me a little too long. Funny thing, though, that anonymous tip about the accounts came from a payphone near Branson. Same place you took vacation, right? I smiled. Small world. Reeves didn't push. He never would. In this town, justice sometimes came from strange places. He knew that. I knew that. I went back to work. Oil changes, brake pads, honest labor. And every evening I drove home to silence. Peaceful, still mine. There was a new campaign sign in the street near my house. Someone else running now. Someone clean, I hoped. As I passed it, I raised a cup of gas station coffee to the empty street. "One honest man left," I whispered. "Still here."